together. And I'm thrilled this morning to welcome Mandy-Marie, who is here to talk to us about how our value is not tied to the path our children take. And I think that's something that all of us need to think about and work on. So, welcome, Mandy-Marie. So happy you're here with us.
Thank you, Angela. I'm thrilled to be here.
Hey. All right, so let me tell you a little bit about Mandy-Marie. Um, Basically, she's going to help us learn about our worth as moms and how it ties into our children's choices today. So, she is a certified professional coach with 11 years' experience coaching one-on-one through the techniques of her Mind Mastery program. Doesn't that sound good? I want to master my mind. So, her program, she helps women uncover and rewire the subconscious programming that hinders their ability to live the life they want. She loves to empower women to be their best in spite of challenges. She's happily married, the mother of five, and Nana to 12. That's a lot of birthdays to keep track of. She treats, massages, bubble baths, and mint dark chocolate M&Ms. Yum. That's
And
awesome.
it's awful they don't make them anymore.
Are you kidding me?
Oh,
Gotta
it's awful.
find another thing to love then.
I know.
Utah mint truffles. I love those. They're
Oh,
milk
yeah, those are good.
milk. I don't know if you can handle that, but yeah,
Oh, no, it has to be dark.
it has to be dark. Okay, I
Yeah.
like it. But we can still be friends.
Okay.
So anyway, thank you so much for being with us. So tell us a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today. What does untangling, what does the untangling refer to? What are you going to tell us about?
So, as moms, it's just natural human behavior to tie our value or our worth to what our kids do or don't do. And so to untangle that and really see what's really true actually sets the stage for us to really be free to be the best versions of ourselves as moms and as women.
I love that. We do get tangled up in that, and we don't even realize it sometimes. I
Yeah.
think sometimes we see someone who's like living their mom life, they're living their life through their child, and we can see that happening, but we don't realize that when our kids are throwing a temper tantrum at the grocery store, that's like we can like step aside.
Yeah.
Hey, yes, that might be a reflection on my parenting and my motherhood, but my child is the free has freedom to make choices separate and aside from me and who I am and what I teach them. So that's awesome. So what sparked your interest in learning about this and talking to moms about this?
Well, actually, it was several years ago, and I was meeting with a client, and my husband and I were actually on a vacation. And so I stepped aside for a little while to have this call. And this client expressed to me that her greatest fear was that at one point, her adult children may leave the faith that they were born with. And so we started to explore that, like, okay, I mean, it makes sense why there would be a lot of fear wrapped up in that. And as we talked about it more and more, um, I was able to help her understand that her value as a human being and as a woman did not change and would not change if her children decided to make different choices as they moved into adulthood. And that really shifted a whole bunch of things. And it actually prepared me as a coach to, as I entered the same kind of phase and the same kind of situations as my children were getting older, it was like, whoa, this is big. And
Hard.
I started to notice everyone that I was coaching had this challenge. And it didn't matter whether they were moms of little children or teenagers or empty nesters. Everybody was struggling with it.
I think that's hard. I think it's so heartbreaking to us to teach our children the things that we believe in or that, whether it be honesty or integrity or our religion or our belief in God or whatever it is, it's really hard to see them be themselves and take alternate paths. And I think it's especially hard when they're taking a path that might be dangerous to them, like addictions or poor relationship choices like an abusive relationship, that type of thing. It's heartbreaking. It's like deep into our core as moms, right?
Yes.
So deep. So what do you suggest to moms to, I mean, and I'm assuming it's the same for moms with adult children
Yep.
and young children, but
Yep. It is completely, yeah. The very first thing is an awareness of what it is that you're feeling and the message behind it. So all of our feelings and our thoughts have messages behind them. So for this one lady that I was working with, when this first started to evolve in me and I started to gain this understanding, was fear. Right? So we decoded the fear. What was the fear really saying? And when we got to the root of it and understood, oh, the fear is saying that I am less valuable as a mom if my child takes a different path. Whoa, then it was like, okay, now we can decode that emotion and understand it. And then we can say, okay, is it really true? Like, really, truly, does my value change if my child decides to turn in a different way? If they decide to leave their faith, if they decide to become an addict, like whatever their choices are, does that really mean that I am less of a human being, that I am less as a mom? So that is the first step, is to really decode the emotion that we are feeling. Understand, what is it really truly saying?
so just kind of looking inward, like something's
Mhm.
happening, we're feeling upset, we're angry, we're worried, we're like freaking out like we do as moms
Yep,
because
yep,
we are doing everything we can to raise these children, to nurture them, to help them become happy, successful, responsible adults. So
yeah,
when I see something like that, I think about myself. I mean, I think it's like you said, just sitting down and looking inwardly and saying, what am I feeling?
yep.
What's going on? And then
Mhm.
what would you say after that?
Yeah. So then comes the point where you can cultivate confidence because you ask yourself, is it really true? Am I really less of a person
Okay.
because my child is taking a different path? Now, the answer to that is no, you are not less valuable. You don't have less worth because your child is choosing a different path. Now, sometimes people are like, yeah, but well, it sure feels like it. Yeah, yes, it does sure feel like that. And I use this analogy of like $100 bill. Like, what is its value? It's worth $100, right? And even if I crumple it up and if I stomp on it and if I run it through the mud, right? And if I was to hand it back to you, Angela, like, would you still take it?
Absolutely. It has that
Because
$100
why?
value. Yeah,
That's right. Its value did not change. So you could still go to Target and still get $100 worth of product, right? Even if it's been crumpled and whatever. So that's one way that I like to teach value. Like it, yes, our children make the decisions they make, and sometimes you're like, wow, that is so shocking because I taught honesty better, and now you're being very dishonest, and I just don't get it. And being okay that, all right, I did my best, and maybe some days that didn't seem very good, but I know that I've done my best to teach them true principles. And I am going to allow them to experience the natural consequences of whatever their choices are. And I am for sure going to say, my value doesn't change. So that is where cultivating confidence really comes in. And the more that we can cultivate that confidence as moms, wow, then our bandwidth goes from here, like I'm all tied up, I'm tangled up in my kids and what they're going to do and what they're not going to do. And we move that bandwidth out to here to be like, oh, okay, I can see more clearly what's really going on. And then it's really cool because then as moms and as women, we can literally step into being the best version of ourselves because we are not tangled anymore around those choices that our children make.
so it sounds like just like stepping back and seeing the perspective, seeing that from a
Yes.
larger picture, looking at it
Yep.
as a whole. That's really interesting. I love that. I also wanted to ask you about guilt because I just have to say this, that a lot of times when I look back, my kids are grown now and I have grandchildren, and I still look back and I think, Oh my gosh. Like I'm tearing up right now. Like why? But I'm
Mhm.
thinking, what could I have done differently? What did I do wrong? Oh, I didn't do this as well as I should have. Did I look them in the eyes when they were talking to me enough?
Yeah.
Spend enough quality time? Was I just the harried mom running around trying to
Yep.
get ready to do everything that had to be done and make dinner
Mhm.
and do the homework and take the kids
Yep.
here and there and carpool and blah, 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 blah. And I look back and I think to myself, I second guess myself and I
Mhm.
say, oh my gosh, I wasn't as consistent with scripture reading or family prayer, or I wasn't as consistent with, I let him get away with stuff I shouldn't have, or maybe I helped him, the special needs went too much with his homework.
Mhm.
Moms, we reflect at the end, we look back. And I think for me, that makes me, I feel like guilt. Like, what did I do
Yep.
wrong? And I have to remind myself that I did the very best I could with what I had, with who I was in those moments. And yet I have a hard time with that guilt. And I think, okay, they're making these choices. What did I do wrong? And I have to say, I didn't necessarily do anything wrong. I gave them the best mom I could, the best mom I was capable at the time with whatever knowledge I have. But what would you suggest to moms that feel that kind of thing tied in? I can say, okay, it's their life, let them make their choices. But then I'm like, ugh, what did I do?
Right.
What did I not do that I should have?
Yep.
Especially
Yeah.
when it's scary things like suicide ideation, or if it's like getting abused by a spouse, or if it's,
Mhm.
anything that's really could be very harmful to them, then I think, what did I'm not saying that happened with my kids, but what I'm saying is those are
Right.
the kids out there. Or maybe it could be if you're someone that's been divorced, you think, oh my gosh, maybe it's because there was so much turmoil in the family and there was so much going on and it was just hard for us to even continue. So what do you say to moms about that kind of thing?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I can relate to so much of what you just said. Like, I'm
Right.
human too. And I think that any woman listening to this has some version of understanding exactly what you said. Yeah, the guilt that is very, very real. And so my thought with that is as a faith-based woman, are you trying to be their savior by thinking if I would have had everything lined up, then everything would be perfect and they would be making all the right choices and they would be doing all the things that are going to support them having a really abundant life, right? Like that's really ridiculous for us to think that we have that much power.
You're right. You're so right. Oh my gosh. We think we have all this power.
Yep.
Guilt
Yeah,
is really us thinking if I would have done something right, I had the power to save this kid from his
that's right. That's
that,
right.
and
And
that's a big
it,
message.
it is. And then if you go a little bit deeper than that, you'll probably find out that your brain is telling you that you would have more value if you had done everything exactly right so that your kids would make all the right choices.
Hmm.
And it's so false. And so it's like beating ourselves against our heads against a brick wall, thinking if we do it long enough, that brick wall is going to fall. And knowing, no, it doesn't matter how much you beat your head against that brick wall, it's never going to fall. So in essence, we do that as women, as moms. We think, well, if I just have everything exactly right, then my kid's going to do all the great things and make all the right choices, and I'm going to be comfortable. Right? And so we beat our heads against that, thinking that's what's going to happen, and it doesn't happen. And then when our child goes and makes different decisions and lives their life, we blame ourselves. And it's really, I mean, in some respects, I guess you could call it selfish, but it's just human behavior. So this is why decoding our emotions and then cultivating confidence and understanding, is it really true, is so invaluable. So invaluable because to get out of that mindset of like, I need to be their savior, which, right, like most times when I say that to people, they're like, what? I'm not, like, but really, like, is that what's going on so that we feel comfortable? Because I have never met a person that feels okay being uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Right. So are we treating our relationship with our children and our value because it makes us feel better?
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
another good question to ask ourselves.
I love that. I think psychologically speaking, I mean, that's my background. If you are looking at your child or a spouse or any other human being, if you're looking at them like you need to do everything that you can
Hmm.
to make their life okay, we're being like codependent. We are trying to
Yeah,
take their power away, like you mentioned. We're trying to
yeah,
be their savior, their rescuer. And
yeah,
that's not what it's about. And who are we to think that we should have or can take that power from them? We don't
right.
kids to be exactly like us. We don't want little clones of ourselves. We want
Yeah,
living, breathing, hopefully by the end, they're still living
yeah,
and breathing. We
yep,
haven't done anything, we haven't
yeah.
forgotten to feed them, but we want them to be human beings that can take in information from the world, can make decisions, can make choices, can
Mhm.
can find the life for themselves, can make the life that they want for themselves. And we just have to not think we are in charge of it all. We're not in
Yeah,
charge of it all. And as moms, we don't think that. We're like looking for the best. We want them to be happy. We don't want them to make bad choices because then they'll hurt. And I think even
yep,
when they're younger, when they make bad choices or poor choices, we try to run in and rescue them for those from those choices. And my big deal is we got to stop doing that because what
yeah.
happens is we're rescuing them and they're not having to feel the consequences of their choices.
Mhm.
Then they grow up and real life hits them and they
Mhm.
can't function. They're
That's
like,
right.
they're lost. They have no clue. And so we want kids that own their own power, that we've given that power to. So let me ask you another question then. So, what do you do? How do you treat your children when they have gone a different direction? Or, how do you, even if it's a positive thing, like they're doing really well, we shouldn't tie our value to them. But then
Right. Yeah,
treat them
yeah,
as a
yeah.
good
So
love or whatever.
yes. So that's a really, really good question because when the rubber hits the road, like really, truly, what is going to help us? And so I go back to that first piece, which is decode the emotion.
Mhm.
So when this happened to me, and it's happened in two really big ways with two of my adult children, I went through a mourning period with each one of them. And I faced it and I felt it. I knew enough. I have practiced this enough to know to give myself permission to feel all the feels
Mhm.
because it's legit. Like it's hard, it's uncomfortable. It's yeah, like what did I do wrong? Like all those questions you were asking earlier, like I should have done this and what if I did that? And what about blah, blah, and what about that? And, like I went through all of that and I allowed myself to feel it. I allowed myself to face it. That was so, so important. I didn't say, oh, I shouldn't be thinking that. I shouldn't be feeling that, and just kind of push it to the side. Like I did not do that because I know that that is so damaging. So face it and feel it and then hear it. What's the message? So when I got to that point, I said to myself, okay, brain, what are you saying? What's really going on? And my brain gave it back to me. It said, yeah, well, you're not as valuable as a mom. And I was like, oh, I know that that is not true. I have been coaching women about this for years. I know that that's not true. And that right there just helped my brain to just kind of almost do a reset because I was able to call it out. I didn't keep it hidden in a corner. I called it out and said, yeah, brain, you're telling me that my value is less than because my child decided they're going to leave the family, or they're going to cancel me as their parent, or they're going to leave the faith, or they're going to become addicted, whatever it is. So that piece of like facing and feeling your emotions, that's part of decoding. Like, what are you really experiencing? Let yourself experience it and then ask yourself, is it really true?
Oh, yeah. I love that too. I think that grieving is so important. I know
Hmm.
even people that I've known who've had a poor relationship with a parent, with their own parent, just because the parent is highly dysfunctional or has never been there for them. They've got to go through that grieving
Yes.
and it is okay. It's necessary. It's important
Yes.
because when you grieve like that, when you can go deep, then you are able to heal. And
Yep.
when you heal, you can move forward. So
Yep.
taking a few minutes, a few hours, a few days, whatever it is, to do that grieving for whatever it is traumatizing you or is hard for you, whether it's your child, your parent, your marriage, whatever it is that's not the way you thought it was going to be, taking that time to grieve is huge. And then you're able to heal, like I said, and step back and see
Yep.
the big picture and let go of that person. And I think as moms, there's a lot of letting go that has to be done when our
Mhm.
kids, even if they're not doing anything that we don't want them to do, we still are going to go, you got that kind of car? Why did you pay that much money? Or I mean, just stupid things. And we've got to let go. We've got to say he's an adult. He can make his own choices. And I need to let go and just love that child. And it doesn't mean, I think loving the child doesn't mean rescuing them from everything still. Because we're still like, as parents, we're still like working on it. Like we're still
Yeah.
parents, we're still mothering. So we still want to get in there and say, oh, what you should have made this choice or that choice, or why did you do that? And we want to be so involved that it's so important to step back, do
Mhm.
our grieving
Mhm.
if it's something that's really upsetting, do our grieving, and then just let go. Let them live their lives. That's what we were raising them for. Like
Yeah.
our life is a training ground, preparing them for their
Yep.
future. I love that you talked about grieving, and I love that that you were able to look inside yourself and hear what your brain was saying
Mhm.
and say,
Mhm.
no, 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 I refuse to accept that. Because
Yeah.
just being conscious of that is huge. Then
Yes.
you could fix it. You could do something with it.
Yeah. Yeah. So something you said there about reminded me that it's really important that we trust our children in their journeys and that they know that we trust them in their journeys.
Love that.
And
Yes.
that is a really big piece of that. Like as we get really clear in what's really going on with us and why we're responding the way that we are, what we do is we subconsciously at least send this message to them that I trust you in your journey. So people would often, I mean, I hear this all the time, like, just love them, just love them, just love them. And for years, I'm like, okay, what does that really mean? Like, really, truly, what does it really mean to love your child if they are not listening to you and if they're causing problems over here, whatever it is, like, what does that really mean?
Mhm,
And what I've come to figure out is that it means that I trust them in their journeys and I trust them to solve their challenges.
mhm,
And I know that they're going to have bumps along the road, just like I have, just like I do. And I trust them to figure it out. So the more that we can send that energetic shift, if you want to call it that, to our children, whoa, it just, first of all, for me, it just took this weight off my shoulders and was like, whoa. Like, really, truly, this is their life. And they have been trained and they're awesome. Like, really, they are awesome. They're figuring this out. And I love being able to just give that to them and empower them with that trust. It reminds me of a story with another client several years ago, and she actually has told me that the most important thing that she has learned is that her value is not tied to her children. And having children at home, so this speaks to all the moms that are still with those kids at home. And she would very much do a lot of the I gotta fix it, and she came home from school and she said all of this, and I gotta just, okay, how can we make sure everything's gonna be okay? Like she was that kind of mom. And out of the goodness of her heart, right? Like she was just doing the best that she knew how to do. And as we worked through this and she started to practice like really giving trust to this daughter to solve her challenges, she told me that one day this daughter came home from school and she just, went off, whatever, and was all worried about something and whatever. And the mom, she stopped herself. She's like, okay, hold on. I'm not going to go into fix it mode. And I know that my value isn't tied to the fact that she's having this challenge right now. And so she stopped herself from doing what she normally would do, and she just listened.
mhm,
And then the daughter stopped talking for whatever reason, went off, whatever, whatever. A few hours went by, and the mom thought, I'm just going to go see how she's doing. So she goes into her bedroom, and the daughter's there on her bed, and she just laid down next to her daughter. She said, just tell me more about your day. Help me to understand what it was like for you. And she said, for the first time, that daughter really opened up to her and really shared with her. And this mom said, the only reason I was able to have that kind of interaction with her is because I put aside that my value was even a part of this conversation, because it's not. So she was able to show up so authentic to who she really truly is as a mom and as a woman, and really meet her daughter where her daughter was, and really empower that daughter with, I know you can make it through this. And I'm here to just listen about what it's like. And then to ask you, do you know what to do next? What do you think you can do next? And it just shifted everything for them that day.
That is so beautiful because what does every human being want? They want someone to listen, to
Yeah.
care. And I love that you were saying, trusting their journey because we do have to trust whatever journey they're going through. They are going to
Mhm.
learn things
Yeah.
through that journey that we can't teach them. They're going
Yeah.
to learn through their
That's right.
struggles, through the things that they go through. And I also think it's so important to realize what that mom was doing was allowing her daughter right then. She's saying, I trust you now, not I
Yep.
trust you when you're an adult and leave home. I trust you now. And you know what? She just talking, sometimes people figure out for themselves, but just
Yep.
knowing that girl could come home, that her mom would just listen to her, just love her, wasn't lecturing, wasn't trying to fix it, was saying, I have confidence in you. You can handle this. Tell me more. She was
Yep.
just open receptacle for her daughter, whatever her daughter needed, whatever feelings she needed to work through. And you know what? I bet you anything she solved it on her own. And so the mom
Yeah.
was not only being there with love, with
Yeah.
trust in the journey, but she was also teaching her how to do it in the future instead of rushing in when she's at home, living at home, because it's a safe environment there. She's letting her daughter learn where it's safe so that later when she goes out and things are harder and trickier, she
Yeah.
feels confident in herself that she can make that
Exactly.
because she had a mom who loved her. She had a mom who trusted her, a mom who was supporting her, who said, you can get through this. That is such a powerful story. Thank you for sharing that.
You're
Love that.
welcome. And that mom could do that because she had untangled her value from her children's challenges. I mean, this was just a normal challenge that happens in high school, right? Like it was normal everyday stuff that this daughter was dealing with. And so it can be that simple, which is not simple, right? To adult children who decide to leave their faith, right? Like it doesn't matter what the challenge is. The whole point is to welcome the clarity that comes when we understand that our value is not tied to the paths that our children take. And it's not tied to their challenges. It
Mhm.
isn't.
Right, right. And that really makes me think about I know a lot of times, not a lot of times, frequently I hear of people who have cut off someone in their family. They've cut off their child because their child is not performing
Mhm.
way they want them to. And then they sever that relationship. And then they lose the relationship with the grandkids that come in the
Mhm.
future. And I
Mhm.
think what was most important, what's most important is to continue that relationship, to keep that communication open, to show that love, to not put a block in that relationship and just to love. And it's hard sometimes to love when they're going completely off the rails in their lifestyle or their choices or whatever, in our opinion. And it's
Mhm.
tough, but I've seen so much damage done in families where people are cut off. And I think what's more important? What is more important for us to be right, for them to be doing what we want them to do, or to have that relationship? The relationship always trumps being right. But so
Yeah.
often
Yeah.
we're tied in to our own image and our own personal, like you were talking about, if we can't untangle ourselves from what they do, and we're so caught up in that, we get hard, we're not open, we're not loving, and we cut off and we shut off that communication. And so this is such a huge message that I think you're teaching parents that keep it open, keep it loving, keep untangle yourself and just step
Mhm.
back and get that big perspective like you were talking about. That is so huge. And we don't even realize it until we're like in the middle of it. And some people go their
Yeah.
whole lives not talking to their child because they're angry and then the child never wants to go back home. It
Yeah.
just ends.
Right.
So, not to be
Yeah.
depressing, but
Yeah.
we should encourage.
Well, that's a very real scenario, and I can tell you my personal experience. I have the opposite scenario where my husband and I have been canceled by one of our children, and so to learn how to love them and send that to them because we cannot communicate with them. Uh, but because I've done so much work, I've grieved at the whole process, like I talked about earlier, like I am at peace. And I know that my value hasn't gone up and it hasn't gone down as a result of this situation. And it hasn't improved because of how I'm handling it, right? Like value just stays the same. It's independent of our children's choices. It's independent of our choices as well. So getting to peace when you've done everything that you can and somebody else decides, no, I don't want you in my life, like that is just as valuable as being at peace and having a relationship with a child that doesn't agree or you don't agree with what they're doing.
Right. And they can cancel you, but then you've got that open heart. You are
Yeah.
there whenever they're ready to
Yep.
come back. You
Yep.
are there. And I think that they will remember the love. They will remember the teachings. They'll remember the nurturing. I mean, they're going to remember hard times too, because we're not perfect parents,
Right.
but at
Right.
least that you're keeping that open
Right.
because you've untangled yourself from what
That's
they've
right.
done. You are
Yeah.
clear and clean motives and pure
Yep.
motives in, and you're ready. Whenever they are ready, you are open and you are ready. This has been so awesome. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us before we end that you think is important for moms to take away from this? It's been so good.
I'm so glad. This has been great. Yeah, there's one phrase, if you could just remember this one phrase and be curious about how it works for you, how it like why is it true? Your value is independent of your children's choices. Just remember that. Just think on that. Just be curious about that.
Write that somewhere so that you
Yeah.
can see it every day,
Yep.
even when
Yep. Put
they're
it on
little.
your fridge. Put it on your
Even when they're little, and like I was saying,
Yes.
throw a tantrum at the store, or they make a
Yep.
bad choice, or they
Yep.
hit baseball into somebody's window, or whatever it is,
Mhm.
we gotta start practicing separating our value from their
Yep.
choices when they're little. That would be
Yep.
such a huge thing if we could do that.
Yep. Totally, totally. Yeah. I've watched some of my daughters-in-law and how they interact with their young children. And it's so beautiful to see them honor those children right where they're at. And I think, oh, you just keep doing that because it's going to pay massive dividends as they become teenagers and then adults.
I
So
think
it should start very, very early.
yes,
Get
yes.
go.
Hey, I love that. This has been fabulous. Thank you, Mandy-Marie. Everybody, you can watch this recording again. I don't think I've ever been part of a conversation, a class, or anything where this is talked about in this way. So I think this is
Mm.
a huge message for moms. So thank you for being with us. And
Oh, you're
moms
welcome.
across America, thank you for being with us today. This has been fabulous. So happy that you joined us. Coming up next week on Tuesday, we have Deanne who will be doing her podcast. And she's actually going to be interviewing my husband, which will be fun. And he's talking about how to protect our children from child predators. And so he's worked in social work for many, many years, his whole career, and he's seen so much. And he's got some advice for parents on what to look for, how to protect our kids. And so that's going to be great. So tune in for the podcast Tuesday at noon next week. And then the week after, we have someone coming And she is going to talk to us about how to get your kids to sleep. She's like the sleep expert for kids. We all know how hard it is. You're like, oh my gosh, my kid's a year old and not sleeping through the night or whatever it is. So she's going to give us some skills and some tools for that. So thanks for joining us today as we've learned, connected, been inspired as moms. And remember, when you're going throughout your day and things are hard and the laundry's piled up and the kids are talking back and you can't get everything done you need to get done, remember you are not alone. You have an army of moms across America who are there to support you and love you and be part of you. So thanks so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week.